The British Tier 10 collector heavy tank known as the Super Conqueror is basically a souped-up conqueror, as it says in the title. It's as close as we're going to get in the current time frame of a Tier 10 British Super Heavy. It's got great hull-down capability with 10 degrees of gun depression, fantastic turret armor, and a very nice gun, very in sync with the other British Tier 10 tanks, dealing 400 damage per shot, having very nice damage per minute, and as well that glorious Hesh that we all know and love, or sometimes hate to go up against. It's got decent mobility, 35 kilometers per hour forward, but a very, very solid power to weight ratio. And one thing a lot of people really get caught off guard by when it comes to the Super Conqueror is the sheer amount of turret traverse speed it carries, meaning that even if something tries flanking you, it's going to have a very, very hard time out-traversing this vehicle. The Super Conqueror is one of my favorite Tier 10 heavies in the game, and it's an incredible hull-down beast that can conquer almost any ridgeline or even heavy tank in the game. In today's video, we'll be doing a full in-depth review on this British monster. The Super Conqueror really is an attractive looking Tier 10 heavy tank. I just wish that it did not cost money for people to get their hands on, especially because in World of Tanks PC, it's a tech tree. But that aside, in today's video, I'll be doing a full in-depth review letting you know everything you're going to need to on this British Tier 10 collector. Its strengths, its weaknesses, armor profile, and as well some pretty solid gameplay followed up with it. So as always, if you enjoyed today's video and you'd like to see more long in-depth reviews like this in the future, please consider smashing that subscribe button down below, as these do take a lot more time and effort than my average video. Before we break into the statistics of this vehicle, I want to go into my equipment loadout, specifically because there is one piece of equipment on this vehicle that makes a massive difference on how it feels and drives on the battlefield, and that would be refined gun. When it comes to calibrated or gun rammer, that is completely up to you. If you like getting extra penetration like me, then go for calibrated, but obviously if you want to have a lot of DPM, then go for gun rammer. I would highly suggest to use enhanced gun laying drive to make that aiming time better. But when it comes to refined gun or V-stabs, I would highly suggest to run refined gun. The Super Conqueror, for anybody that doesn't look on in-depth statistics that Blitz Hanger or Armor Inspector shows, this vehicle has the best on-movement dispersion in Tier 10 for a heavy tank. Now, what that means is when you are driving the vehicle, your gun does not disperse much. It's absolutely amazing. Just to put in your mind how good the on-movement dispersion is, a T125 running V-stabs has the same on-movement dispersion as a stock Super Conqueror. So, what that means is if you run the vehicle correctly, you put on refined gun, making the big downside of terrible dispersion on this vehicle go away. And because the gun's so accurate on the move, it's not even a downside, you just gain dispersion. I would highly suggest to run refined gun if you haven't been running it. It is a lifesaver, and it actually makes the vehicle seem really accurate for a 120mm. Now for vitality, it doesn't matter too much. I like the engine damage one just because obviously this tank gets damaged modules, so I'd rather get that instead of ramming because the tank is already a very heavy beast. Obviously go for hit points. Armor isn't going to make a huge difference on this vehicle. And when we go to toolbox, that is one of the most important equipment in the game. Everything else, I mean, it's fair game to you guys, but I really just wanted to stress refined gun is a must-have on the Super Conqueror. So now let's get stuck into the statistics so you can see obviously what the dispersion and everything looks like. Now, if you are running gun rammer, you will have 2,850 damage per minute instead of the 2,650 I have, but obviously you don't get that Hesh penetration benefit, and your standard and premium ammo don't have as much, so I personally prefer being able to pen my shells just a tad bit more, but you can definitely get away with only running gun rammer on a vehicle like the Super Conqueror, especially because 2850 DPM is quite a bit for a Tier 10 heavy. Dispersion and aiming time added together, as we went over, are very nice for a 120mm, and it's got very, very solid pen, especially if you're running Cali. 342mm of APCR is equivalent to about 374mm of heat pen that you'd find on vehicles like the IS-4 and other Tier 10 heavies that have massive heat pen, because obviously APCR has shell normalization. So it actually has really nice pen. You'll notice that in the gameplay I show you. 400 damage per shot isn't anything amazing, but it's plenty to pepper your opponents with. You always know that you're going to out-reload them, especially especially because you have more damage per minute than most tier 10 heavies to begin with, so that's something that's very nice about this tank. Also, carrying 10 degrees of gun depression, you obviously cannot go wrong with that. It'll be able to work any ridgeline just as well as any other tier 10 in the game. When we take a look at the turret, there's one thing you want to look at, and that is the turret traverse. It is 38.88 degrees a second. This is one of the fastest turning turrets I've ever seen, especially when you look at it for a heavy tank. That is quick enough to easily out-traverse any mediums flanking you, and it's really nice because you don't have to turn your entire tank sometimes, exposing your weak hull, when you could just turn the turret to the side and snap somebody. It's a really nice advantage on the Super Conqueror, and as well if you're working hull down and you have to look at more than one opponent and bounce shells, it's really nice to be able to turn your turret quickly, other than slowly and, like the Kranvong now, that can quite easily be pinned in the side of the turret if you're not focusing two opponents at once. Mobility-wise, the tank isn't the fastest at 36 kilometers per hour, but because that is a very nice average speed of 30 because of its great terrain resistance and decent power to weight, it's actually not that bad on overall acceleration, and you shouldn't feel too slow unless you're climbing up a really, really big hill. So the Super Conqueror is a really nice jack of trades. It's got great armor, great hull-down capabilities, it's got decent mobility, and a fantastic gun if you're running it correctly equipped. And because of that, the Super Conqueror is one of my favorite tier 10s in the game. Currently, I'm able to sit at a 72% win rate with 3,200 average damage with over 500 battles. And yeah, this is quite an old tank sitting in my garage, so there are many reasons why I absolutely love it, but let's break into the armor profile. When we take a look at the Super Conqueror's armor profile, it's got some really big upsides and as well some really big downsides. The main weakness is that lower plate. Oh, it's absolutely horrific at only 143 millimeters thick. And it's not like that's a small lower plate either. The Super Conqueror's width is about the same as a 60 TP, yet the lower plate, I would say, is about double the size. It is an incredibly weak spot, and if you can hit this at any angle, you'll penetrate it, even at an angle like this. The 60 TP butters through the Super Conqueror's lower plate. Not only that, but the side armor is terrible on this vehicle. When I first started playing this, way back in the day when I bought it, I was really disappointed on how easily this tank gets torn apart when it exposes any of its side armor, and that is still definitely the case. While I have had to greatly adapt my playstyle, hiding my side armor, making sure my lower plate is not in sight, when it comes to the side armor of the Super Conqueror, you have to be really careful. Even at an angle like this, you can penetrate the frontal armor, and that's not very much of an angle on this vehicle at all. So side scraping wise, you have to be very careful, and I would only suggest a side scrape really when you're almost 90 degrees to 80 degrees on your opponent. Otherwise, you're not going to be bouncing too many shells. When it comes, though, to the upsides of the armor, it does have a lot of upsides. First of all, that upper plate is 285 thick on flat ground. Now, unless you're aiming down on the upper plate, like really, really down, you can't penetrate it. And if a 60 TP, even with Kali, is aiming on it, you'll notice that the upper plate has ERA. In another word, it's reactive armor. It's a piece of space armor, which you can see here, that covers the front plate. It's kind of like a super Pershing. The big advantage is that vehicles like the 60 TP that shoot heat, you'll notice they can't pen it. Because it is spaced armor, no matter how much pen you have in tier 10, if you try to penetrate the upper plate of a Super Conk, you will not cut through it with heat shells. Now, if I pull out a vehicle that shoots APCR, let's say I go over to USSR, and I go pull out, I don't know, an Object 263, you'll notice the 263 does penetrate the upper plate, and that's because the 263 does not struggle with spaced armor, as APCR does not get caught through a chemical reaction. It's just a armor-piercing shell that cuts right through any space. So heat shells have a massive disadvantage when trying to penetrate the Super Conqueror, where APCR does not. Now, when we take a look at the turret armor of the Super Conk, hull down, it's very, very strong. Even when using premium shells, you'll see for the most part, you're not going to penetrate this turret. It's over 500 millimeters thick. The mantlet's almost impervious, but at the same time, there are weaknesses. This is not like a Concept 1B where you physically can't pen it. If you aim at this vehicle, you can penetrate right on the cheeks of the turret. Now, obviously, that's a very, very hard shot, especially if you're trying to aim at it from distance, but if you're pretty close and you're aiming at it hull down and you're in a Kranvong or concept, you definitely have comfortability to aim in on weak spots like that, and I can definitely say myself, for a fair share of times, I have quite easily gotten a Super Conk penned through that weak spot. As well, another really big weakness of this vehicle that people still do today is spam HE. An HE shell from an object 263 rolls about 300 to 200 damage on the spot right there I'm aiming at. And it doesn't really matter where you shoot, it'll just roll about 250 damage everywhere on this tank's turret, which kinda sucks. That means that if you're in a higher alpha tank, let's say like an E3, you'll deal 400 to 500 damage on a Super Conqueror hull down. That is the real downside of the Super Conk, and it's one of the things that really grinds my gears when I'm trying to use this vehicle hull down. I feel comfortable, and then I get an HE shell that just kind of butters me for 300 hit points. And another thing that a lot of people actually get very trolled about is the hatch on the Super Conk. You'll notice that it's at a really steep angle, and what that means is that if you're actually using this vehicle hull down, well, first of all, you can't pen it. But if you do have it exposed, if you actually hit this part of the hatch, you won't pen because it's angled. So you have to hit the top of the hatch. My suggestion is don't shoot at the Super Conk hatch. You're going to be let down if you try to. It's a really hard hit, and even if you do hit the weak spot, half the time it just says observation device broken, and then it doesn't even do any damage. I would suggest if you're going to shoot at a weak spot, load premium and just go for the next part of the mantlet because it's a lot easier to hit. Side armor wise, it is quite a bit thicker than the normal Conqueror at 102 millimeters thick, and that's nice because that means any HE shells from 150 plus millimeters, unless it's a 183, will not be penetrating the side of the vehicle. However, the rear of the tank is not the case. The rear of the turret's only 69 millimeters thick, and the rear of the hull is only 40. So yeah, quite easy to penetrate there. But overall, I mean, you could definitely see where the Super Conqueror is very strong hull down. And if you want a really good comparison to see how its armor really is, compared to a T110 E5, the E5's turret cheeks are way weaker, especially even when using it hull down. And the fact that the Super Conqueror gets more gun depression, now it has more DPM, it's got a better gun for a lot of regards, especially because it shoots APCR, which I love a lot more than heat. So, yeah, I can definitely say that the Super Conqueror has a better armor profile than the T110 E5. It's a lot more reliable, and the fact that it has more gun depression, plus Hesh, and everything going for it, even before the E5 was nerfed, the Super Conk just wins flat out. In the first battle, we are going to find ourselves stuck on Vineyards. Now, Vineyards is a very large and expansive map. It's one of the largest maps you can explore in the game because you got medium side all the way over towards A, and it's even further past. And then in the other side of the map, we got C side where you can push your heavy tanks, but not all types of heavies work super well at base C because obviously, if you don't have a lot of armor, especially when it comes to the Super Conqueror, that is all based on hull down capabilities, going to a map area that is completely flat is not the best idea and really not ideal for this tank. So what I'm going to do is go towards the encounter cap, and this is what I will do every time in a hull down tank. It doesn't matter if I'm running an STB-1, an M48 Patton, a Concept 1B, or a Super Conk, I will most likely place it right in this spot here. Now why? Well, first of all, I can completely cover tanks, as you can see, crossing over towards A side, but I can also cover tanks like the C100, which is foolishly poking my hull down Super Conk, over towards the heavy side. So I've got two sides of the map I'm completely covering, and that's great because this gives you massive map control. As well, if enemy tanks try pushing towards where like the M103 is, I can also get some pretty easy shells in, but right now I'm waiting. The M103 I know isn't one of my biggest threats, so I'm just waiting here. We got the E100 off to the side. I want to get another shell into his tank. There you go, easy snap. That made up for our weird wonky bounce on that Jagdtiger's lower plate. But, I mean, you can see how nice the gun handling seems on this vehicle. It's accurate enough because of refined gun that you don't feel like your shells are going to miss, and you can snap them even when you're not fully aimed in. The damage per minute's a nice amount that you can constantly pump shells into enemy opponents. That was just a weird shot from that M103. I was wondering what shot me, and I was like, that guy? Really? I wasn't even looking at him. But, either way, we're already up to 1,500 damage dealt and 1,100 blocked. Hopefully the C75 is going to poke. There you go. I knew he was going to do it. Easy shot into his side for for 460, and that just pushed us past the 2,000 damage mark. So now we're again aiming in on the side of the 75. We got a quick enough rate of fire to get a shell in. Oh, 559 because we lit him on fire, and a max roll. And now I'm putting on my adrenaline to hopefully get another shell in his vehicle. There you go, another tap. And with that, we're sitting at 2,957 damage. That is just how quickly the Super Conqueror can rack up damage. Sure, it's not like a WZ-113 that has 3,440 DPM, but 2,850 if you're running gun rammer is more than enough to cut through enemy armor. It's more than enough to easily get you on top of the food chain when fighting other tier 10 heavies. We got the Ag Tiger, and I just fired a premium shell just to make sure that it would not do what the first shell did. And we're already up to 3,600 damage. Yag Tiger is taken out. We got the Yag Panzer E100 off to the side, and obviously I wanted to get a lot of damage out. So I knew that I could shoot the E100 whenever I wanted, but right now we're going to shoot at the Yag Panzer. So there's one shell into his tank. Here comes the second shell. Thank you very much again for your hit points. I know the E100's off to my side. Trying to think of what I want to do. Yeah, we're gonna deal with the E100. You can see that amazing turret traverse there. Let's aim it on the E100. Aiming and fire. Oh, that shell just goes a teeny bit low. I could have aimed a bit higher and it probably would have hit his tank, but yeah, we kind of got robbed on that one. So let's try another shell on the U100, and again, you can see the accuracy. Yeah, it's still not amazing. If you're shooting on the move like that, you're not going to hit all of your shots, but I guess that's a risk I was willing to take. There's a nice penetration onto the E100 turret. I was actually a bit worried because they were going up quite high on base cap. Now this was a bit risky. For any of you that don't know, you can penetrate that little bar on the lower plate of the E100 there, but oh well, I got kind of unlucky, so I was like, fine, I'll load premium ammunition, and I'll just penetrate him. So, oh well, I guess I took a couple risks, but it's not the end of the world. We get some pretty easy shells into the U100, finish him off in the lower plate, and with that, we dealt 5,368 damage. We blocked over 2,200, and that was a really good win to showcase just where, in a haul-down situation, the Super Conq feels absolutely influential and almost untouchable in certain scenarios. So there you go, a nice mastery, and did really everything we needed to. On the second game, we find ourselves stuck on Dynasty. Now, Dynasty can be a great map for a vehicle like the Super Conqueror or any haul-down vehicle, because you just drive towards the park, which would be base C, you work haul down, and you're almost untouchable. You can see at the beginning, I was going towards C, but then I noticed my team was going to A side. Now, I specifically picked this replay because I played it on flat ground, but I wanted to showcase that just because the Super Conqueror's armor is not amazing on flat ground does not mean it doesn't work, and as well doesn't mean the tank still itself isn't amazing in a lot of situations regarding its gun, damage per minute, and what it can really pump out. So right now, I'm working haul down here. Well, not fully haul down. That's one of the issues with this position is you're not always fully haul down, but ooh, lucky snap into that 57 turret for 350. I'm not even mad about that low rolling because that really shouldn't have hit. But you'll notice in a scenario like this, yeah, I'm exposing my armor, AMX gets a shot into me, but obviously I get an easy tap back into his vehicle. So with that, we're at 800 damage already dealt at the beginning of this game. My ML2 is going to get shot by the AMX, so I'm going to drive up, get another sap into his vehicle, and back into cover. That's now 1,200 damage we've been able to deal, and that AMX is absolutely devastated on his hit point pool already. Now I'm going to drive towards this TVP. I notice that he's going towards my teammate, so I want to help out my teammate. Obviously, I don't want him getting fully clipped by this TVP, so we're going to drive over here. We're going to aim in a Hesh shell on the side end. Oof, a 510 damage shot. This is where the Hesh feels absolutely devastating on enemy armor. Unfortunately, I should have aimed that in. That was my fault. I left auto aim, and yeah, that was just a monkey move for me. So because of that, I was not able to finish off the TVP with a Hesh shell, but it's all good. We got a second shell in anyway, and because the TVP has such a long clip reload, the guy wasn't able to take any more hit points off of my already bleeding Object 84. Now, at this moment, we're already up to 2,500 damage, and if I hadn't have messed up that Hesh shell on the TVP, we quite easily could have been sitting upwards of 3,000, although, speak of the devil, max roll on that Vickers CR, and now we are at 3,000 damage. So already you can see just where this gun has been able to rack up that damage. Now, I know the waffles there, we got the Vickers CR, I'm a little cautious, but at the same time, I'm not super worried. I want to try and farm damage, that's what this tank's really good at doing. So there's a nice shot in the side of the ST1, and ooh, maybe we can get another shell out. Come on, reload. Oh, he pulls forward. Obviously, I don't want to expose my armor too much to the enemy waffle, but I notice the Vickers is coming behind me. You can see there that absolutely ridiculous turret traverse. It really is stupid stupid how quick the turret turns on this vehicle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push on this Vickers and get a nice Hesh shell right into his vehicle for 514. I mean, it's not like we needed the shoot Hesh there because he only has 40 health, and my next shell is going to kill him anyway, but it's always nice to do it. So here we go. Easy shell finishing off the Vickers. That guy must have hit my track or something and messed up that shell. But uh-oh, now we got the waffle, and I only have 594 health. Uh-oh, I'm going to try and side scrape, but well, my teammate shoots him, so it looks like we don't need to be worried. We're already up to 4,670 damage in this battle, and yeah, I mean, that's just how quickly this vehicle racks up the damage. Its gun is great. It's got pretty good mobility for what it's worth. You'll notice that even though this tank only goes 36, it doesn't actually seem slow because it's got a really solid power to weight ratio. I don't have any complaints about the Super Conqueror. By no means is it an overpowered tank, or is it the best tier 10 heavy in the game. But I definitely think that in a decent player's hands, and if you know how to use the vehicle, you can do more than enough in the tank. Just in my session today alone, I was able to go 90% win rate and average around 3,700 damage. So I've always liked the Super Conqueror, a very fun and very flexible tank, but there are a lot of downsides with it. So just because you see 2 good battles here does not mean every battle is going to be amazing, and you got to be very careful on who you fight and pick a fight with. Obviously, I hope you enjoyed today's video. This took a lot of time to edit, a lot of time to get through, and I think it's my longest one yet. So if you enjoyed this and you'd like to see more like it in the future, please consider smashing that subscribe button down below and check out future videos. But other than that, I'll be seeing you in the next one. Bye-bye.